When my son described the family who died in that house fire 3 years before he was born, he got every detail right. My son drew a picture of himself on fire, not the crude stick figures most 5-year-olds make. This was detailed. A boy standing in a doorway, orange and red covering his clothes, his hair, the door frame charred black. And in the corner of the page, so small I almost missed it, a dog. He'd written a name above it in shaky letters. Biscuit. We don't have a dog. We've never had a dog. When I asked him about it, he didn't look up from his coloring. That's from before, he said, when I lived in the yellow house. We've lived in the same apartment since he was born. There's never been a yellow house. But then he described it, the layout, how you had to go through the kitchen to reach the back bedroom, the window that stuck and never opened all the way, the squeaky third step on the stairs. He said these things casually, the way you describe your own home. Then he mentioned the address. I was folding laundry when he said it, watching cartoons on the couch. He just stated it out loud, unprompted, 1847 Maple Street. He said he missed the swing in the backyard, the one that hung from the big tree. My hands stopped moving, because I knew that address. Not well, but enough. It was across town, in the neighborhood I used to drive through on my way to work. 3 years before my son was born, there'd been a house fire there. A bad one. I waited until he was asleep that night before I searched for it. The articles came up immediately. A family of 3, parents and a 7-year-old boy. Electrical fire started in the walls. Middle of the night. They never made it out. One photo showed the house before the fire. Yellow siding, just like he'd said. Another showed the ruins. My mouth went dry when I found the detail buried in a longer feature article. The family had a golden retriever named Biscuit. The dog had died in the fire too. That information had never been in the main news coverage. I had to dig through 3 different sources to find it. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the drawing, about the doorway. The next morning, I asked him how he knew about the yellow house. He looked at me like I was the one being strange. I told you, I lived there before. Before what? Before I was here. The way he said it wasn't eerie. It was matter of fact, obvious. I pressed him, asked him what he remembered. He talked about the smell, smoke, and something sweet he couldn't name. He described trying to open a window that wouldn't budge. He talked about the heat and how the hallway got dark. He said he'd called for Biscuit, but couldn't find him. Then he said something that made my blood stop. I couldn't get the door open. It was too hot to touch. He looked down at his hands. My name was different then. It was Ethan. The boy who died in that fire was named Ethan Ross. I found his school photo in an obituary. Brown hair, brown eyes, same as my son. But that's where the similarities ended. Different face, different features. There was no rational reason my son should know any of this. I told my husband. He said we should take him to a therapist. That maybe he'd overheard something, seen something online, constructed a fantasy. But I'd been with him constantly. We didn't talk about house fires. He didn't have unsupervised internet access. And he kept asking the question. Every few days, always phrased the same way. When can we go back home? Not to the yellow house. Home. Last week, I drove past 1847 Maple Street. The lot was empty. They'd torn down what remained of the structure years ago. Just an empty patch of land with a realtor's sign. But the tree was still there, the big one in the back. And hanging from it, half rotted and covered in moss, was a child's swing. My son had never been there. I'd never told him about it. This morning, he drew another picture, the yellow house again. But this time, he drew two figures in the doorway, one small, one my height, both on fire. Some memories aren't meant to survive. If you've experienced anything like this, share your story below. And remember, not everything forgotten stays gone.